Abandoned in deep space. Until a human warship answered the call, reaches its dramatic zenith as Captain Marlowe executes a daring collision course bluff against the Chiron vessel. In a heart-stopping moment, the USS Avenger launches torpedoes at the last possible second, forcing the enemy ship into the unstable wormhole. The resulting catastrophic collapse destroys the invading forces, saving countless lives. The vastness of space stretched before her, like an endless ocean of darkness, punctuated only by the distant pinpricks of stars that offered no warmth, no comfort, and certainly no salvation. The research vessel, Astra Voyager, drifted aimlessly through the void, its once pristine hull now scarred and battered by the celestial debris it had encountered during the ill-fated expedition. Located far beyond the boundaries of civilized space, the ship had become nothing more than a floating tomb, with only a single soul still conscious aboard. Dr. Lyra Tolan stared at the emergency console, her slender Xerian fingers hovering over the quantum beacon controls. The blue-tinted skin of her hand appeared almost translucent under the dim emergency lighting, veins pulsing with what little strength she had left. As the ship's leading xenobiologist and the only crew member not in cryosleep, the weight of 12 lives rested squarely on her shoulders, a burden that grew heavier with each passing hour. "Life support reserves at 28%, announced Cora, the ship's artificial intelligence, its feminine voice betraying no emotion despite the dire circumstances. "Oxygen levels will become critical in approximately 73 hours. Lyra's gaze drifted to the sealed chamber adjacent to the bridge, where her 12 colleagues lay suspended in cryosleep. The damage to the ship's primary systems had corrupted the revival protocols, leaving them trapped between life and death, completely unaware of the danger they now faced. Among them was Captain Nerissa, the veteran explorer who had led them into this uncharted region in search of new biological specimens. Technician Voss, whose quick thinking had saved them from complete destruction when they'd encountered the strange energy field. And Dr. Alara, her research partner and closest friend aboard the vessel. "If I activate the quantum beacon," Lyra said aloud, more to herself than to Cora, "how much power will it consume?" "The quantum beacon will drain approximately 40% of our remaining power reserves," Cora replied. "This will reduce life support duration to 44 hours. Lyra closed her eyes, feeling the cold metal of the console beneath her fingertips. The mathematics were simple, but cruel. Activate the beacon and risk everyone dying before help arrived, or conserve power and guarantee a slower death with no chance of rescue. In the vastness of space, particularly in this unmapped region, the chances of anyone detecting their distress signal were astronomically small. But it was the only chance they had. "Record this message," Lyra commanded, her voice stronger than she felt. "This is the research vessel, Astra Voyager, out of Xeria Prime. We have sustained critical damage to our life support and propulsion systems. 12 crew members in emergency cryostasis. We are scientists. We carry no weapons. Please assist." She paused, considering whether to add more detail about their coordinates or the nature of their mission, but decided against it. In this region of space, one could never be too careful about who might be listening. "Message recorded," Cora confirmed. "Awaiting your command to transmit." Lyra took a deep breath of the increasingly stale air. "Activate the quantum beacon." The console illuminated with a soft purple glow as the beacon powered up, drawing precious energy from the ship's reserves. A subtle vibration ran through the deck plates beneath her feet as the device sent its desperate plea racing outward at faster-than-light speeds, carrying their message across the cosmos in quantum-entangled particles that defied conventional physics. "Beacon activated," Cora announced. "Message broadcasting on all emergency frequencies." "Now we wait," Lyra whispered, staring out at the stars through the bridge viewport. She wondered if anyone was out there to hear them, or if they were truly alone in this cold, indifferent corner of the universe. Unknown to Lyra, Deep within the damaged research ship, a forgotten piece of technology stirred to life. The experimental Chiron device, the very reason the Astra Voyager had been sent to this region, began to emit a low-frequency energy signature in response to the quantum beacon's activation. Its purpose remained mysterious, but its presence would soon complicate their already desperate situation, far beyond what Lyra could imagine. The stars continued their silent vigil as the Astra Voyager drifted, a tiny speck of life in an ocean of emptiness, broadcasting its plea to an uncaring universe. Light years away, aboard the United Earth Alliance warship, USS Avenger, Lieutenant Maya Foster jolted upright in her chair as the quantum receiver on her communications console suddenly flared to life. "Captain," she called, her fingers flying across the haptic interface. "We're picking up a distress signal, quantum entangled, bearing 227 Mark 043. Captain James Marlowe turned from his conversation with the tactical officer, his weathered face creasing with concern. "Source? Unknown vessel, sir," Foster replied, still working to clean up the signal. "Wait, I'm getting an identification code. It's a research vessel, the Astra Voyager, Xerian Registry." Marlowe's expression darkened. "Xerian. They're a long way from home." He stepped closer to Foster's station. "Let's hear it." The lieutenant nodded and activated the ship's speakers. The message played, the alien voice carrying a distinctly feminine quality, despite its slightly higher pitch than human standard. The desperation in the tone transcended species barriers. "We are scientists. We carry no weapons. Please assist." A heavy silence fell over the bridge as the message ended. It was Security Chief Reeves who finally spoke up. "Sir, that region is at least 12 light days outside our patrol zone. It's within the restricted perimeter area." Chief Engineer Hayes stepped forward, her dark features set in a frown. "Captain, that's dangerously close to the Chiron testing grounds. Alliance regulations explicitly prohibit." "I'm aware of the regulations, Chief," Marlowe interrupted, his voice firm, but not unkind. He studied the stellar map displayed on the main view screen, where a blinking red dot indicated the approximate origin of the distress call. "How long would it take us to reach them at maximum warp?" "Approximately 18 hours, sir," the navigation officer replied. "But I must emphasize that entering the perimeter without authorization from Alliance Command could result in court-martial." Marlowe's jaw tightened. He had served in the Alliance fleet for over 20 years, had fought in the border skirmishes against the Sarathi Dominion, and had earned every one of the commendations that adorned his uniform. But in all those years, he had never abandoned a call for help, regardless of who was making it. "Lieutenant Foster, send a message to Alliance Command informing them of our intention to respond to a distress call. Chief Hayes, prepare the engines for maximum warp. Tactical, bring all defensive systems to standby." He straightened his uniform jacket with a sharp tug. "Navigation, set course for the source of that signal. Engage when ready." As the bridge crew rushed to comply with his orders, Hayes approached him privately. "Captain, I feel obligated to remind you that we'll be out of communication range with Command once we enter the perimeter. If anything goes wrong, then we'll handle it, Chief," Marlowe replied quietly. "I'm not leaving anyone to die in the emptiness of space. Regulations be damned." Hayes hesitated, then nodded. "Aye, sir. Engines will be ready in 10 minutes." As she departed, Marlowe returned his attention to the view screen, where the stars were already beginning to elongate as the Avenger prepared to jump to warp speed. Whatever awaited them beyond the perimeter, he was determined to reach the stranded Xerian vessel before it was too late. Back on the Astra Voyager, Lyra had retreated to the small laboratory adjacent to the bridge. Her breathing had become more measured, deliberate, as she tried to conserve oxygen. The ship's life support systems were prioritizing the cryostasis chamber over the rest of the vessel, meaning the air was growing thinner everywhere else. Cora, display current research findings, she commanded, her voice slightly hoarse. If these were to be her final hours, she would spend them completing her work. Perhaps someday, someone would find their ship and their discoveries would not be lost. Accessing Xenobiology database, Cora responded. A holographic display materialized above the workstation, showing complex molecular structures and tissue samples collected from the gaseous moon they had been studying before disaster struck. Lyra examined the floating models, manipulating them with practiced gestures. The microorganisms they had discovered in the upper atmosphere of the moon displayed remarkable adaptability to extreme conditions, properties that could revolutionize medical treatments across the galaxy. It was a discovery worth celebrating, worth preserving at all costs. A sudden alarm blared through the laboratory, causing Lyra to flinch. "Warning," Cora announced. "Anomalous energy spike detected in the secure research bay. Chiron device exhibiting unexpected activity." Lyra's heart raced. The Chiron device, the mysterious artifact they had been sent to recover and study, had been dormant since they brought it aboard. The official mission briefing had classified it as an archaeological find. But Lyra had always suspected there was more to it than Xerian authorities were admitting. "Cora, seal the research bay and initiate containment protocols," she ordered, already moving toward the bridge. "What triggered the device?" "Unknown," the AI responded. "However, the energy signature appears to be responding to the quantum beacon's frequency." Lyra froze. Had she inadvertently activated the device by sending out their distress call? What exactly was this artifact they had been sent to retrieve? As she reached the bridge, the ship's lights flickered ominously. The main console displayed a schematic of the vessel, with a pulsing red area indicating the research bay, where the Chiron device was stored. "Energy output increasing," Cora reported. "Radiation levels rising within the containment field." "Can we shut down the quantum beacon?" Lyra asked, desperation creeping into her voice. "Negative. The beacon's transmission mechanism is self-sustaining until power reserves are depleted." Lyra's mind raced through possibilities, none of them promising. If the Chiron device was indeed some kind of weapon, as she had begun to suspect, activating it could be catastrophic. But without the beacon, their chances of rescue were zero. "Divert auxiliary power to strengthen the containment field," she ordered. "And prepare a full report on the device's energy signature. I need to understand what we're dealing with." As Cora complied, Lyra stared at the readings with growing dread. The device's energy pattern was unlike anything she had ever seen, with quantum fluctuations that defied conventional physics. Whatever this thing was, it was far beyond Xerian technology, perhaps beyond any known civilization's capabilities. And now it was awake, its mysterious purpose about to be revealed aboard a crippled ship in the depths of space. The USS Avenger tore through the fabric of space-time, its warp engines pushing well beyond recommended safety parameters. On the bridge, the atmosphere was tense but focused, each officer attending to their duties with the precision expected of Alliance personnel. "Entering the perimeter in 30 seconds, Captain," announced the navigation officer, Lieutenant Talia Rodriguez. "Communications with Alliance Command will be severed once we cross the boundary." Captain Marlowe nodded, his expression resolute. "Understood. Security Chief Reeves, status of our defensive systems?" Reeves, a compact man with a perpetually serious demeanor, responded without looking up from his console. "Shields at maximum. Weapon systems charged and ready. Point defense grid online." "Very good. Lieutenant Foster, continue broadcasting on all Alliance channels. Let them know we're responding to a distress call." "Aye, sir," Foster acknowledged, though her expression suggested she doubted anyone would be listening once they crossed into the restricted zone. Chief Hayes emerged from the turbolift, making her way directly to the captain's chair. "Engineering reports the warp core is stable, but we're pushing the safety margins. I wouldn't recommend maintaining this speed for more than 12 hours. "Noted, Chief. How are the preparations for a potential rescue operation? Medical Bay is prepped for Xerian physiology, and we've configured 2 shuttles for emergency evacuation if necessary. Dr. Williams has studied Xerian medical protocols, though he admits his knowledge is theoretical at best. Marlowe offered a grim smile. Let's hope theory doesn't need to become practice. Crossing the perimeter now, Rodriguez announced, as if to emphasize her words. The ship's long-range communications array emitted a final burst of static before falling silent. They were on their own now, committed to their course of action with no possibility of calling for reinforcements or guidance. The view screen displayed only the streaking stars of warp travel, giving no indication of the invisible boundary they had just crossed. How long until we reach the Astra Voyager? Marlowe asked. 15 hours, 7 minutes at current speed, Rodriguez replied. Marlowe frowned. Too long. Far too long for a vessel with failing life support. Push the engines to warp, 9.6. Hayes started to object. Captain, the structural integrity field can handle it for a short duration. Marlowe finished for her. I'm aware of the risks. Chief, we'll reduce speed if necessary. But right now, every minute counts. Hayes pressed her lips into a thin line but nodded. Aye, sir. I'll monitor the field personally. As the chief engineer departed, Marlowe addressed the entire bridge crew. I know we're operating outside regulations, but there are lives at stake. The Alliance was founded on principles of cooperation and assistance to all sentient beings. Today, we honor those principles. Keep your stations, stay alert, and let's bring these people home. The officers exchanged glances of determination and pride. Despite the risks, there wasn't a person aboard who disagreed with the captain's decision. The Avenger accelerated, pushing deeper into forbidden territory, racing against time to reach the stranded Xerian vessel before it was too late. Aboard the Astra Voyager, Lyra's condition was deteriorating rapidly. The air had grown so thin that each breath required conscious effort, and a persistent headache pounded behind her eyes. Yet she refused to retreat to the cryostasis chamber, where the atmosphere remained stable. Life support at 18%, Cora reported. Oxygen levels critical in all sections, except the cryostasis chamber. Lyra ignored the warning, focusing instead on the maintenance hatch she had opened beneath the main navigation console. The circuit board inside was a complex maze of crystalline pathways and quantum relays, several of which had been damaged during their encounter with the energy field. Cora, highlight the primary life support circuit, she requested, her voice barely above a whisper to conserve oxygen. The AI complied, causing a section of the circuitry to illuminate with a soft blue glow. Lyra carefully extracted the damaged component, a translucent chip no larger than her thumbnail. If she could bypass the corrupted pathways, she might be able to extend their life support duration, perhaps long enough for help to arrive, if anyone had heard their call. I will need to power down non-essential systems to complete this repair, she told Cora. Maintain minimal function and continue monitoring the Chiron device. Acknowledged. Be advised that the device's energy output has increased by 27% in the past hour. Containment field integrity at 75%. Lyra's hands trembled slightly as she worked, partly from oxygen deprivation and partly from the implications of Cora's report. If the containment field failed, the consequences were unknown, but almost certainly catastrophic. The ship suddenly lurched, throwing Lyra against the console. She gasped in pain as her shoulders struck the hard edge. "Warning!" Cora announced, its voice somehow managing to convey urgency despite its programmed neutrality. Spatial distortion detected. The Chiron device is generating a localized gravity well. Lyra struggled to her feet, bracing herself against the console as the ship continued to shudder. "Show me," she demanded. The main view screen activated, displaying a view of the secure research bay. The Chiron device, a polyhedral object roughly the size of a Xerian skull, covered in intricate, glowing patterns, was now hovering several centimeters above its containment pedestal. Around it, tools and equipment orbited like satellites, caught in the microscopic gravity it was generating. Fascinating, Lyra murmured, scientific curiosity momentarily overriding her fear. It's creating its own gravitational field, independent of the ship's gravity generators. The field is expanding, Cora warned. At current growth rate, it will encompass the entire research bay within 43 minutes. Lyra's momentary wonder evaporated. Can we jettison the research bay? Negative. Emergency jettison systems are offline due to power conservation protocols. Of course they were. Lyra's mind raced through alternatives, each more desperate than the last. The device clearly responded to the quantum beacon's activation, suggesting some form of communication capability. Perhaps, Cora, modify the quantum beacon's frequency. Shift it by 0.3 terahertz. Modifying frequency. Be advised. This may compromise our ability to be detected by rescue vessels. Understood. Do it anyway. As Cora implemented the change, Lyra returned her attention to the damaged circuit board. With trembling fingers, she completed the bypass, rerouting power around the damaged sections. It wasn't elegant, but it might buy them a few more precious hours of oxygen. Circuit repair complete, she announced, sliding the component back into place. Cora, reinitialize life support systems. The lights flickered as power flowed through the repaired circuits. For a moment, Lyra feared she had made things worse. But then, the environmental systems hummed back to life with renewed vigor. The air began to circulate more efficiently, and Lyra found herself able to take deeper breaths. Life support efficiency increased by 12%, Cora confirmed. Estimated duration extended to 59 hours. A small victory, but significant nonetheless. Lyra allowed herself a moment of relief before turning her attention back to the view screen, where the Chiron device continued its ominous display. Has the frequency shift affected the device's behavior? Negative. Energy output continuing to increase. However, the quantum beacon's signal strength has decreased by 32%. Lyra closed her eyes in momentary despair. She had gambled and lost, reducing their chances of rescue while failing to neutralize the threat. As a scientist, she had always believed in the rational universe, in cause and effect, in problems having solutions if one was clever enough to find them. But here, drifting in the void with a mysterious alien device, threatening to tear their ship apart from within, rational solutions seemed increasingly out of reach. The ship lurched again, more violently this time, sending Lyra sprawling across the deck. As she struggled to rise, a new alarm sounded, different from the others, more urgent. Proximity alert, Cora announced. Unknown vessel detected approaching at sublight speed. Lyra's heart leaped with hope as she pulled herself back to the console. Show me! The view screen shifted to an external view, where a distant point of light was growing steadily larger against the backdrop of stars. It was moving with purpose, on an intercept course with the Astra Voyager. Rescue, Lyra whispered, hardly daring to believe it. Vessel configuration unknown, Cora replied, not matching any Xerian registry. As the ship drew closer, its silhouette became clearer, sleek, predatory, with obvious weapon emplacements along its hull. This was no rescue vessel. It was a warship. Scanning indicates military-grade shielding and multiple weapon systems, Cora continued. Design consistent with United Earth Alliance specifications. Humans. Lyra had encountered them only in academic contexts, never in person. Known for their adaptability and unpredictable nature, humans had expanded rapidly through their sector of space since developing faster than light travel. The United Earth Alliance was their primary governmental body, not hostile to Xerians, but not close allies either. Are they responding to our distress call? Lyra asked, watching as the warship continued its approach. Unknown. They have not attempted communication. Lyra straightened her posture. brushing strands of her silver-white hair back from her face. If these humans were indeed responding to their call for help, she needed to appear composed, dignified, a representative of her species. "Open a communication channel," she instructed. "Broadcast on all frequencies." Cora acknowledged the command, and Lyra took a deep breath before speaking. "This is Dr. Lyra Tolan of the Xerian research vessel, Astra Voyager. We are in critical condition with failing life support systems. 12 crew members in cryostasis. We thank you for responding to our distress call and request immediate assistance." The view screen remained unchanged for several long moments, the human vessel continuing its approach without response. Then, suddenly, the screen flickered, and a human face appeared, male, by Lyra's recognition of their dimorphic species, with short cropped gray hair and features weathered by age and experience. "Dr. Tolan, this is Captain James Marlowe of the United Earth Alliance vessel, USS Avenger. We received your distress call and have come to render assistance. What is your current status?" The relief that flooded through Lyra was so intense, she nearly lost her composure. They had heard. They had come. They were not alone. "Captain Marlowe," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "Our situation is critical. Life support systems are failing, and we have a complication." She hesitated, unsure how much to reveal about the Chiron device. "There is an artifact aboard generating unusual energy readings. It may pose a danger to rescue operations." Marlowe's expression remained professionally neutral, but Lyra detected a slight tightening around his eyes. "Understood, Doctor. We're dispatching a shuttle with an engineering team to assess your situation. Please transmit any data you have on this artifact, so we can prepare accordingly. I will send what we have. Though I must warn you, our understanding of the device is limited." Lyra gestured to Cora to begin the data transfer. "Captain, I cannot express adequately what your arrival means to us. We had almost lost hope. A flicker of something, compassion, perhaps, crossed the human's features. No one deserves to die alone in the emptiness of space. Doctor, the Avenger will see your crew safely home. Marlowe out." As his image disappeared from the screen, Lyra allowed herself a moment of pure, unrestrained hope. They were saved. Against all odds. Someone had heard their call and crossed the vast emptiness to reach them. But even as she celebrated this miracle, the ship shuddered once more, a reminder that their ordeal was far from over. The Chiron device was still active, still dangerous, and now potentially threatening not just the Astra Voyager, but the human vessel as well. Salvation had arrived, but with it came new complications and new responsibilities. Lyra straightened her back, gathering her remaining strength. She would not fail her crew, nor would she allow harm to come to those who had risked so much to save them. The game of survival had entered a new phase. On the bridge of the USS Avenger, Captain Marlowe studied the data streaming in from the Xerian vessel with growing concern. The readings from the so-called artifact displayed patterns consistent with experimental quantum weaponry, technology that, officially, the Alliance had banned decades ago. "Chief Hayes," he called, turning to where the engineer was analyzing the same data at her station. "Your assessment." Hayes looked up, her expression grim. "If these readings are accurate, Captain, that device is generating a localized space-time distortion, similar to a miniature black hole, but controlled, somehow. I've never seen anything like it. Could it pose a threat to the Avenger? At its current power level, no, but these readings suggest it's growing stronger. If the containment field fails..." She left the implication hanging. Marlowe nodded, understanding all too well. "Lieutenant Foster, contact Dr. Williams. I want him fully briefed on Xerian physiology before the shuttle launches. Lieutenant Rodriguez, Maintain our position at 500 kilometers from the Xerian vessel, close enough to assist, far enough to retreat if necessary. As the officers acknowledged their orders, Security Chief Reeves approached the captain's chair. "Sir, I feel compelled to point out that this situation has all the hallmarks of a trap." Marlowe raised an eyebrow. "Explain." "A damaged vessel in restricted space, carrying an unknown device with weapon-like properties, broadcasting on frequencies that only military vessels would monitor." Reeves lowered his voice. "The Xerians have been expanding their scientific expeditions into disputed territories. This could be an attempt to test our military response capabilities, or worse, to lure an Alliance vessel into a compromising position." "Your concerns are noted, Chief," Marlowe replied, his tone measured. "But I've seen the life support readings from their ship. Those are real people in danger, not elaborate decoys. With respect, sir, sophisticated holograms could—" "That's enough, Chief," Marlowe interrupted, more firmly this time. "I understand caution, but I will not abandon a vessel in distress based on speculation. Prepare a security team to accompany the engineering shuttle, if that will ease your concerns." Reeves straightened, recognizing the finality in the captain's tone. "Aye, sir. I'll assemble the team immediately." As the security chief departed, Marlowe returned his attention to the view screen, where the crippled Xerian vessel hung against the backdrop of stars. There was something almost beautiful in its design, more organic than human ships, with curves and spirals that suggested natural growth rather than industrial construction. Chief Hayes approached again, datapad in hand. "Captain, I've analyzed the schematics the Xerians provided. Their life support system is compatible with our emergency power couplings. We should be able to stabilize their environment long enough to evacuate all personnel." "Good work, Chief. And the artifact?" Hayes hesitated. "That's more complicated. If we try to move it while it's active, the disruption could accelerate the space-time distortion. But leaving it aboard a failing ship is equally problematic," Marlowe finished for her. "Options? 2 possibilities. Sir, we attempt to deactivate it using a targeted EMP, risky, given how little we understand about the technology. Or we tow the entire Xerian vessel to a safe distance before attempting extraction." Marlowe considered both options, neither particularly appealing. "How long would it take to prepare the ship for towing?" "With a full engineering team, perhaps 2 hours. But that's assuming the Xerian hull can withstand the stress of a tractor beam, given its current damage." Another complication. Marlowe made his decision. "Prepare both options. We'll attempt deactivation first, with towing as a fallback if that fails. And Chief—" "Sir, I want you personally supervising the operation. This is too important to delegate." Hayes nodded, a mixture of pride and apprehension in her expression. "Understood, Captain. I'll prepare the shuttle immediately." As she departed, Marlowe settled back into his command chair, eyes still fixed on the distant Xerian vessel. The Alliance had strict protocols about interference with alien technology, particularly anything that might be classified as a weapon. But those protocols assumed normal operational circumstances, not a vessel on the brink of destruction with lives at stake. Sometimes, Marlowe reflected, regulations had to give way to a higher moral imperative. He only hoped his decision wouldn't lead to disaster for both ships. Lyra worked feverishly at the science station, analyzing the latest data from the Chiron device. Its energy output had stabilized somewhat after the arrival of the human vessel, but the containment field continued to weaken, now at barely 50% integrity. "Cora, display comparative analysis of the device's energy signature before and after the arrival of the Avenger," she requested. The AI complied, generating a holographic display that showed 2 overlapping waveforms. The patterns were similar but with subtle differences, the newer readings showing less chaotic fluctuations. "Fascinating," Lyra murmured. It's almost as if the device is responding to the presence of the human ship, becoming more ordered. That assessment aligns with observed data, Cora confirmed. Energy output has decreased by 8% since establishing contact with the USS Avenger. Before Lyra could pursue this line of inquiry further, a new alert sounded. Shuttle approaching, Cora announced. Human design. Appears to be a transport craft with moderate defensive capabilities. Lyra straightened, preparing to receive their rescuers. Direct them to docking port 3. It's closest to the cryostasis chamber. As Cora relayed the instructions, Lyra made her way from the bridge toward the docking area, moving carefully through the ship's corridors. The reduced gravity caused by failing systems made navigation challenging, forcing her to use handholds to propel herself forward. She reached the docking port just as the mechanical seals engaged, signaling a successful connection with the human shuttle. After a series of metallic clanks and hisses of equalizing pressure, the inner door slid open to reveal a team of 6 humans in fitted environmental suits. Their leader, a dark-skinned female with close-cropped hair visible beneath her transparent helmet, stepped forward. Dr. Tolan, Chief Engineer Miranda Hayes, USS Avenger. Captain Marlowe sent us to get your people out of here. Lyra inclined her head in the traditional Xerian greeting. Your arrival is most welcome, Chief Hayes. The cryostasis chamber is this way. But first, I should brief you on the Chiron device. Its behavior has been unpredictable. Hayes nodded, gesturing to 2 of her team. Ramirez, Okafor, begin setting up emergency power couplings. The rest of you, with me and Dr. Tolan. As the designated engineers moved to their task, Hayes and the remaining humans, 2 wearing the distinct insignia of security personnel, followed Lyra toward the ship's central section. Your captain mentioned you discovered this vessel was in restricted space, Lyra said, as they moved through the corridors. We were unaware of this designation. Our mission was purely scientific, exploration of a gaseous moon in this sector that showed signs of unique microbial life. And the artifact? Hayes asked, her tone carefully neutral. Lyra hesitated. Official orders were to recover and study it. It was described to us as an archaeological find of significant cultural importance. But I've come to suspect there's more to it than that. They reached a viewing port outside the secure research bay, where the Chiron device was visible through reinforced transparent aluminum. It continued to hover above its pedestal, surrounded by its small gravity well of orbiting objects. Hayes whistled softly. That's not archaeology. That's active technology. Indeed, Lyra agreed. And its activity increased dramatically when we activated our quantum beacon. One of the security officers shifted uncomfortably. Ma'am, this matches descriptions of prohibited Chiron military technology, specifically, their gravimetric weapons program. Lyra's compound heart skipped a beat. Weapons! We were told nothing of this. Hayes exchanged a glance with her security team before addressing Lyra directly. The Chiron militancy was dissolved after the Proxima conflict, but rumors persist that they continued weapons development in secret. This device resembles theoretical designs for what they called a spacefold initiator, essentially, a device capable of creating controlled tiers in spacetime. For what purpose? Lyra asked, though she dreaded the answer. Instantaneous troop deployment, or, in its offensive configuration, a way to create artificial black holes in enemy territory. Hayes studied the device through the viewport. The Alliance has strict protocols about handling such technology. Normally, we'd be required to neutralize it immediately. Lyra stiffened. That device, whatever its intended purpose, is the property of the Xerian Scientific Consortium. You have no jurisdiction. Easy, Doctor, Hayes interrupted, raising a placating hand. I said normally. These aren't normal circumstances. Right now, our priority is getting your crew to safety. We'll deal with the artifact once everyone's secure. Somewhat mollified, Lyra nodded. The cryostasis chamber is 2 sections aft. 12 of my colleagues remain in suspended animation. Their pods will require careful handling during transport. As they continued through the ship, Lyra noted the efficiency with which the humans moved. Disciplined, coordinated, clearly trained for emergency operations. Despite Reeves's obvious suspicion and Hayes's concerns about the Chiron device, they were here, risking their lives for a crew they had never met, from a species they barely knew. Perhaps there was more to humans than the academic texts suggested. They reached the cryostasis chamber, where 12 pods were arranged in a circular pattern around a central monitoring station. Each contained a Xerian in suspended animation, their blue-tinted skin paler than normal, their chest cavities barely moving with the slowed respiration of deep cryosleep. Hayes approached the nearest pod, studying the alien face within. "Your people," she said softly. "Colleagues, friends." "Both," Lyra replied, moving to stand beside her. She placed a hand on the transparent surface of the pod containing Dr. Alara. "We've worked together for years, exploring the furthest reaches of space in the name of scientific discovery. They trusted me to keep them safe." Hayes met her gaze, and Lyra was struck by the genuine compassion in the human's eyes. "And you have, Doctor. They're alive because of your actions." Before Lyra could respond, her communicator chimed. "Dr. Tolan," Cora's voice announced. "The Chiron device's energy output is increasing again. Containment field at 38%. Hayes immediately activated her own communication device. "Ramirez, status of the power couplings?" "Online and functioning, Chief," came the reply. "We've stabilized life support, but the ship's structural integrity is compromised. We've got maybe 2 hours before critical failure." Hayes turned to her security team. "Begin prep for evacuation. We'll need to move the cryopods to the shuttle in sequence. Dr. Tolan, can your ship's AI transfer to our systems temporarily? We'll need its assistance to maintain proper cryostasis during transit." "Cora can establish a limited interface with your shuttle's computers," Lyra confirmed. "But what about the Chiron device? If the containment field fails while we're still aboard..." Hayes's expression hardened with determination. "Then we'd better work quickly. Cato, contact the Avenger. Tell them to prepare for emergency transport of 12 cryostasis pods and 2 conscious personnel, and inform them we'll need a level 1 quarantine field ready for whatever the hell that thing in the research bay is." As the humans mobilized with practiced efficiency, Lyra found herself swept up in their purposeful activity. For the first time since the disaster had struck, she allowed herself to believe that they might all survive this ordeal. Yet even as hope kindled within her, the ship trembled once more, a reminder that time was running out. The Chiron device was awakening, and its mysterious purpose was about to be revealed. Captain Marlowe paced the bridge of the Avenger, unable to remain seated as the rescue operation progressed. The view screen displayed the Xerian vessel, with the small shape of their shuttle docked against its hull. Regular updates from Hayes's team provided reassurance that the evacuation was proceeding, but each passing minute increased the risk. "Captain," Lieutenant Foster called from her station. "I'm detecting unusual energy fluctuations from the Xerian ship. The readings are..." "Sir, they're off the scale." Marlowe moved swiftly to her console, examining the data with growing alarm. "Analysis?" "The energy signature matches theoretical models of quantum singularity formation," Foster replied, her voice tense. "If these readings are accurate, the device aboard that ship is attempting to create a stable wormhole." "Target location?" "Unknown, sir. But the quantum resonance pattern suggests it's attempting to establish a connection somewhere beyond our sensor range." Marlowe straightened, his decision immediate. "Lieutenant Rodriguez, bring us 200 kilometers closer to the Xerian vessel. I want transporter range for emergency extraction if necessary. Lieutenant Foster, open a channel to Chief Hayes. The communications officer complied, and moments later, Hayes's voice filled the bridge, punctuated by the sounds of urgent activity in the background. Hayes here, Captain. Chief, our sensors are detecting quantum singularity formation. You need to accelerate the evacuation. How many pods have you transferred? 7 completed, sir. 5 more to go, plus Dr. Tolan. We're moving as fast as we can, but the ship's structural integrity is failing faster than anticipated. Understood. Continue the evacuation, but be prepared for emergency extraction. If that device goes critical before you've finished. We'll get out, sir, Hayes interrupted, her voice firm despite the obvious stress. One way or another. The communication ended, and Marlowe returned to his command chair, keenly aware of the impossible situation facing his crew. Standard protocol would demand they retreat to a safe distance at the first sign of quantum singularity formation. But retreating meant abandoning Hayes and her team, along with the remaining Xerians. It wasn't an option he was willing to consider. Tactical status of our shields? He demanded. At maximum capacity, sir, Reeves replied. But they're not designed to withstand the kind of spatial distortion we're detecting. If a stable wormhole forms. The implication hung in the air, understood by everyone on the bridge. A stable wormhole opening in close proximity would tear the Avenger apart, just as surely as it would the Xerian vessel. Bring all emergency systems to standby, Marlowe ordered, and prepare the tractor beam. If that shuttle launches, I want it pulled in at maximum speed. As the bridge crew hurried to comply, Marlowe returned his gaze to the view screen, where the Xerian vessel now displayed visible distortions around its hull. Reality itself seeming to bend and warp in response to the forces building within. Whatever happened next would determine the fate not just of the stranded Xerians, but of his own crew as well. Lyra braced herself against the wall as another violent tremor shook the Astra Voyager. The evacuation was proceeding with remarkable efficiency, but the Chiron device's increasing activity threatened to derail their efforts at any moment. Containment field at 22%, Cora reported, its voice now emanating from both the ship's speakers and the portable communication device Hayes had provided. Structural integrity in the research bay failing. Hayes, who was overseeing the transfer of the 9th cryopod to the shuttle, turned to Lyra with an expression of grim determination. We need to buy more time. Is there any way to strengthen the containment field? Lyra considered the question, her scientific mind racing through possibilities. If we reroute power from the remaining non-essential systems, navigation, long-range sensors, and secondary life support, we might be able to reinforce the field temporarily. Do it, Hayes ordered one of her engineers. Okafor, help Dr. Tolan with the power reroute. The rest of you, continue with the evacuation. 3 more pods after this one. As Okafor followed Lyra to the main engineering console, the ship lurched again, more violently than before. Warning lights flashed across the display panels. Cora, status of the Chiron device? Lyra demanded. The device has begun a new phase of activity, the AI reported. Energy readings indicate it is attempting to establish a stable quantum tunnel to an external location. A wormhole, Okafor muttered, his hands moving quickly across the engineering interface. It's trying to create a damn wormhole. Lyra felt a chill despite the failing environmental controls. To where? Unknown, Cora replied. However, the quantum signature suggests a target approximately 26 light-years from our current position. Hayes rejoined them, her expression tense. That's deep within Chiron territory, or what used to be their territory before the Proxima conflict. The implications weren't lost on Lyra. If the device was indeed creating a tunnel to former Chiron space, it could only mean one thing. The artifact wasn't merely a weapon. It was a beacon, a means of establishing instant transportation across vast distances. They sent us to retrieve it, she whispered, the truth dawning with horrible clarity. The consortium knew what it was. They wanted it activated. Hayes's expression hardened. You think your people deliberately. Not my people, Lyra interrupted, shaking her head vehemently. Not the scientists, but those who sent us here. Yes, I believe they knew. The question is, why? The Chiron militancy was disbanded decades ago. What purpose would... Her speculation was cut short as the ship shuddered so violently that all three of them were thrown to the deck. Alarms blared throughout the vessel. Containment field failure imminent, Cora announced. Recommend immediate evacuation of all personnel. Hayes scrambled to her feet, helping Lyra up with one strong hand. That's it. We're out of time. Okafor, tell the team to secure the current pod and prepare for emergency departure. We'll have to come back for the remaining three if possible. No, Lyra protested. We can't leave them. Hayes gripped her shoulders, looking directly into her alien eyes. Doctor, I understand your concern. But if that device creates a stable wormhole, both our ships could be destroyed. We need to get clear and reassess. Before Lyra could argue further, her communicator chimed again. Warning, Cora stated, its synthesized voice somehow conveying urgency. Unknown vessel detected approaching at high speed. Configuration matches Chiron military design. Hayes's expression shifted from concern to alarm. Impossible. The Chiron fleet was dismantled after the war. Evidently not all of it, Lyra replied grimly. Cora, display external view. The nearest monitor flickered to life, showing the starfield outside the Astra Voyager. In the distance, barely visible but approaching rapidly, was a ship unlike any Lyra had ever seen. Angular, predatory, with a hull that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Hayes immediately activated her communicator. Hayes to Avenger. Captain, we have a situation. Unknown hostile vessel approaching. Possible Chiron design. The device is attempting to establish a wormhole to Chiron space. Request immediate support. Captain Marlowe's voice came through clearly. Tension evident, despite the static. Understood, Chief. We've detected the vessel on our sensors. It's heavily armed and on an intercept course. Complete your evacuation immediately. We'll provide cover. As if in response to the captain's words, the view screen showed the Avenger moving into position between the approaching Chiron vessel and the crippled Astra Voyager, its weapons ports glowing with ready energy. We need to move, Hayes urged, already pulling Lyra toward the corridor leading to the docking port. Okafor, status of the pods. 9 secured aboard the shuttle. Chief, the engineer reported. The 10th is being loaded now. Lyra felt torn between the duty to her remaining crew and the recognition of their desperate situation. 3 of her colleagues remained in cryostasis, their lives hanging in the balance. But if the Chiron device activated fully, or if the approaching vessel attacked, everyone would perish. Another violent tremor shook the ship, more powerful than any before. The lights flickered and died, plunging the corridor into darkness before emergency illumination activated, bathing everything in an eerie red glow. Containment field failure, Cora announced. Chiron device now operating without restrictions. Spatial distortion expanding. Hayes grabbed Lyra's arm, pulling her forward with greater urgency. Run! They sprinted through the darkened corridors, guided by the emergency lighting and Cora's directions. Behind them, a strange humming sound grew progressively louder, the song of space-time being bent and folded by forces beyond conventional understanding. They reached the docking port just as the last team members were securing the 10th cryopod in the shuttle. 2 engineers and 1 security officer remained, their expressions tense but professional. The last 3 pods? Hayes demanded. Still in the chamber, Chief, the security officer replied. We couldn't... A deafening crack interrupted him, followed by the screech of tearing metal. The entire ship seemed to shudder, as if in pain. Hull breach in research bay, Cora reported. Spatial distortion expanding at exponential rate. Ship structural failure in approximately 3 minutes. Hayes made her decision instantly. Everyone aboard the shuttle, now. We need to clear the ship before that distortion reaches us. As they rushed into the shuttle, Lyra cast one last despairing glance back toward the cryostasis chamber, where 3 of her colleagues remained. The knowledge that she was abandoning them tore at her hearts. But logic told her there was no alternative. If they stayed, everyone would die. The shuttle's hatch sealed behind them, and the docking clamps disengaged with a mechanical thunk. Through the viewport, Lyra could see the Astra Voyager's hull beginning to distort visibly, reality itself warping around the ship as the Chiron device's influence spread. "Shuttle clear," the pilot announced, gunning the engines to put distance between them and the doomed research vessel. On the shuttle's communications panel, Captain Marlowe's voice came through urgently. "Chief Hayes, we're detecting weapons lock from the Chiron vessel. They're targeting your shuttle. Evasive maneuvers." The pilot responded instantly, sending the shuttle into a series of tight spirals that pressed Lyra back into her seat. Through the viewport, she caught a glimpse of energy beams slicing through the space they had occupied moments before. "Captain, we need cover," Hayes shouted into her communicator. "On it, Chief," Marlowe responded. "Brace for high-G maneuvers." The USS Avenger surged forward, placing itself between the shuttle and the attacking Chiron vessel. Its weapon systems fired in coordinated bursts, forcing the hostile ship to break off its attack run. As the shuttle raced toward the relative safety of the Avenger's hangar bay, Lyra looked back one last time at the Astra Voyager, her home for the past 2 years, now becoming the epicenter of a spatial anomaly that bent light itself around its distorted hull. 3 colleagues left behind, 3 friends she had failed to save. The weight of that knowledge settled in her chest like a stone, even as the shuttle docked safely within the Avenger's protective embrace. The rescue had succeeded, but at a terrible cost, and the battle, she knew, was far from over. The bridge of the USS Avenger erupted into controlled chaos as the shuttle safely docked in the hangar bay. Captain Marlowe stood at the tactical station, watching as the Chiron vessel adjusted its course for another attack run. "Shields at 86%, Reeves reported after the first exchange of fire. "Their weapons are advanced, sir. Some kind of modulated plasma that partially penetrates our defensive fields. Target their propulsion systems," Marlowe ordered. "I want them disabled, not destroyed. We need answers about who they are and what they're doing here." The tactical officer nodded, adjusting the targeting parameters. "Ready to fire, sir." "Execute." The Avenger's main phaser banks released a coordinated burst of energy that struck the Chiron vessel's aft section. The enemy ship lurched, venting plasma from a newly created hull breach, but continued its approach. "Minimal damage to their propulsion," Reeves reported. "Their hull armor is absorbing most of our energy weapons." Before Marlowe could order a change in tactics, Lieutenant Foster called out from her station. "Captain, the spatial distortion around the Xerian vessel has reached critical threshold. Sensors indicate a stable wormhole is forming." All eyes turned to the main view screen, where the Astra Voyager now sat at the center of a swirling vortex of distorted spacetime. The ship's hull was stretching and compressing in ways that defied conventional physics, being pulled toward the growing mouth of the wormhole. "Can you determine the endpoint of that tunnel?" Marlowe demanded. Foster worked frantically at her console. "Difficult to get clear readings through the distortion, sir, but the quantum signature indicates." "Yes, confirming previous assessment. The wormhole leads to a location in former Chiron space, specifically the Denarius system." "What's in the Denarius system?" "According to our records, nothing of significance since the Chiron military base there was destroyed during the Proxima conflict." Marlowe's eyes narrowed. "Supposedly destroyed?" The implications were clear. If the Chiron militancy had survived in secret, maintaining hidden bases beyond Alliance detection, It represented a serious threat to the peace established after the conflict. And if they possessed technology capable of creating stable wormholes for instant troop deployment. His strategic assessment was interrupted by another attack from the Chiron vessel. This one, striking the Avenger's port nacelle. The ship shuddered under the impact. Shields down to 72%, Reeves reported. Port warp nacelle damaged. Output reduced to 60%. Return fire. Full spread of quantum torpedoes. Target their weapons arrays. Marlowe turned to the communications officer. Status of Chief Hayes and the Xerian survivors? All aboard, sir. Medical reports 9 cryopods secure in sickbay with life signs. Stable. Dr. Tolan is assisting with their care. Chief Hayes is on her way to the bridge. At least that part of the mission had succeeded. But now, they faced a new challenge. A hostile vessel of unknown capabilities and a spatial anomaly that threatened to tear apart the fabric of space around them. The turbolift doors opened, admitting Chief Hayes. Her environmental suit removed, but her expression still tense from the evacuation. Captain, the Xerian ship is lost. 3 crew members still aboard. Dr. Tolan is taking it hard. Marlowe acknowledged the report with a grim nod. We'll mourn them later, Chief. Right now, we need to contain this situation before it escalates further. What can you tell me about that wormhole? Hayes moved to the science station, reviewing the data with practiced efficiency. It's stabilizing, sir. Becoming self-sustaining. In approximately 3 minutes, it will be large enough for a vessel to pass through. Like that Chiron ship out there, Marlowe concluded. They're not here to attack us. They're here to use the wormhole. The Xerian vessel was just the delivery mechanism for the device. A Trojan horse, Hayes agreed. The question is, what's on the other side waiting to come through? Before Marlowe could speculate, the tactical station sounded an alarm. Captain, the Chiron vessel is making another approach, but they're not targeting us. They're heading directly for the wormhole. Marlowe made his decision instantly. Intercept course, full impulse. We cannot allow them to enter that wormhole. The helmsman complied, and the Avenger surged forward, racing to cut off the Chiron vessel before it could reach the spatial anomaly. The enemy ship responded by increasing its own speed, turning the maneuver into a deadly game of chicken. They're not going to back off, sir, Reeves warned. Neither are we, Marlowe replied, his voice steel. Tactical. Target their forward sections. Fire when ready. The Avenger's weapons lashed out once more, striking the Chiron vessel's bow. The enemy ship shuddered, but maintained its course toward the wormhole, now visibly distorting as it neared the spatial anomaly's event horizon. Sir, they'll reach the wormhole in 30 seconds, the helmsman reported. Marlowe's mind raced through options. None of them good. They couldn't destroy the vessel without risking a catastrophic reaction with the unstable wormhole. They couldn't outrun it to the anomaly. They needed something unexpected, something the Chiron ship wouldn't anticipate. Lieutenant Rodriguez, he called to the navigation officer. Plot a collision course. The bridge fell silent for a moment as the order registered. Hayes was the first to speak. Captain, you can't be serious. Dead serious, Chief. But we're not going to actually collide. He turned to Reeves. Divert all power to forward shields. Prepare to release a full spread of photon torpedoes. Proximity detonation. At my mark. Understanding dawned in Hayes's eyes. You're going to force them to veer off with the threat of collision, then detonate torpedoes to push them away from the wormhole. Precisely. It's a gamble. But it's our best option. Marlowe returned to his command chair. All hands, brace for possible impact. Engineering, prepare for emergency power redistribution on my command. The Avenger accelerated, its course now aligned to intercept the Chiron vessel, moments before it would reach the wormhole. On the view screen, the enemy ship grew rapidly larger, showing no signs of changing course. They're not veering off, sir, Rodriguez reported, tension evident in her voice. "Hold course," Marlowe ordered, his gaze fixed on the approaching vessel. "Tactical. Armed torpedoes." "Torpedoes armed and ready, sir." The distance between the ships closed rapidly. 5,000 meters. 3,000. 1,000. The Chiron vessel filled the viewscreen now, its alien design more menacing with proximity. "Now," Marlowe commanded. "Full port thrusters. Release torpedoes." The Avenger lurched as its thrusters fired, altering its course at the last possible moment, while simultaneously launching a spread of photon torpedoes directly into the path of the Chiron ship. The torpedoes detonated in a blinding flash, the shockwave catching the enemy vessel and pushing it off course, just as it reached the edge of the wormhole. The Chiron ship tumbled, its port side scraping against the spatial distortion with catastrophic results. The laws of physics bent and warped around the vessel's hull, tearing it apart section by section as it was partially pulled into the anomaly. "Direct hit," Reeves reported, unable to keep a note of satisfaction from his voice. "Enemy vessel critically damaged and unable to traverse the wormhole." But their victory was short-lived. Even as the Chiron ship disintegrated, the wormhole itself began to expand more rapidly, its swirling maw growing to encompass not just the remains of the Astra Voyager, but a significant portion of space around it. "Captain, the wormhole is becoming unstable," Hayes warned, studying the readings from the science station. "The partial entry of the Chiron vessel has disrupted its formation matrix. It's going to collapse, and when it does, the resulting shockwave will destroy anything nearby." Marlowe finished for her. "Including us, if we don't get clear. Helm, maximum warp, bearing 310 Mark 025. Get us out of here." The bridge crew rushed to comply, the Avenger's engines powering up for emergency departure. But before they could engage warp drive, a new alarm sounded from the tactical station. "Captain, sensors are detecting multiple objects emerging from the wormhole," Reeves called. The viewscreen shifted focus, zooming in on the distorted space where several dark shapes were beginning to materialize. Ships, similar in design to the one they had just defeated but larger, more heavily armed. "The invasion force," Marlowe murmured. "They were waiting on the other side." "Warp drive ready, sir," the helmsman reported. "We can still outrun them." Marlowe hesitated, torn between the duty to preserve his ship and crew and the knowledge that if these Chiron vessels successfully deployed, they would represent a serious threat to Alliance security. But the decision was made for him as the wormhole suddenly contracted, its swirling vortex collapsing in on itself with violent force. "Wormhole collapse imminent," Hayes shouted. "The emerging vessels are being drawn back in." The viewscreen showed the partially materialized Chiron ships being pulled back into the destabilizing anomaly, their hulls distorting under the immense gravitational forces. Then, with a final surge of energy that washed over the sensors in a blinding flash, the wormhole collapsed entirely, taking with it the remains of the Astra Voyager, the destroyed Chiron vessel, and the partially emerged invasion force. The resulting shockwave hit the Avenger like a physical blow, sending the ship tumbling through space despite its shields. Marlowe gripped his command chair as the inertial dampeners struggled to compensate, preventing the crew from being thrown across the bridge. "Damage report," he called, once the worst of the turbulence had passed. "Shields down to 38%, Reeves responded. "Minor hull breaches on decks 4 through 7. Emergency force fields in place. Warp drive offline due to power fluctuations." "Casualties?" "Medical reports minor injuries only, sir. No fatalities." Marlowe allowed himself a moment of relief before focusing on their next steps. "Lieutenant Foster, scan the area where the wormhole collapsed. I want to make sure nothing survived." Foster worked her console, then looked up with clear relief. "Sensors show no signs of the Chiron vessels. Captain, the wormhole collapse appears to have destroyed them completely. Space is returning to normal parameters in the affected region." "And the Xerian ship?" No traces remain, sir. Marlowe nodded solemnly. 3 lives lost, but 9 saved, and perhaps countless more by preventing the Chiron invasion force from deploying successfully. It was a victory, but one that came with a heavy cost. Chief Hayes, assist engineering with repairs. I want warp capability restored as soon as possible. We need to get our Xerian guests to safety and report this incident to Alliance Command. He paused, then added more quietly. And I need to speak with Dr. Tolan about what happened here today. As the officers moved to carry out his orders, Marlowe remained in his command chair, staring at the now empty region of space on the view screen. The Chiron militancy, thought defeated decades ago, had nearly executed a surprise invasion through technology that should never have existed. The implications were troubling, suggesting that the peace established after the Proxima conflict was more fragile than anyone had realized. But those were concerns for another day. Right now, his priority was his ship, his crew, and the Xerian survivors who had been entrusted to their care. The Avenger had lived up to its name today, avenging the loss of the Astra Voyager and preventing a potential catastrophe. But the cost of that victory would linger long after the scars on the ship's hull had been repaired. In the medical bay of the USS Avenger, Lyra stood beside the cryostasis pods, containing her 9 rescued colleagues. The human medical staff moved efficiently around her, monitoring vital signs and adjusting the support systems that kept the Xerians in stable suspension. Dr. Williams, the ship's chief medical officer, had been particularly attentive, despite his limited experience with Xerian physiology. Their readings are stable, he assured her, reviewing the data on his medical tricorder. The transfer didn't cause any disruption to their stasis fields. They're going to be fine, Dr. Tolan. Lyra nodded, grateful for his kindness, but unable to share his optimism fully. And when they awaken, how do I tell them that 3 of our colleagues were left behind? That I abandoned them? Williams placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, a human gesture of comfort she had read about but never experienced firsthand. You didn't abandon anyone. You made the only choice available in an impossible situation. Captain Marlowe would have done the same, as if summoned by the mention of his name. The captain himself entered the medical bay, his uniform slightly disheveled from the recent battle, but his bearing still commanding respect. He approached Lyra with measured steps, his expression somber but not unkind. Dr. Tolan, he greeted her. I wanted to check on your people personally. Dr. Williams tells me they're stable. Yes, Captain, Lyra replied, forcing herself to meet his gaze. Thanks to your crew's efforts, we owe you our lives. Marlowe nodded acknowledgement. I understand you're assisting our medical team with their care. Your expertise has been invaluable. It's the least I can do, Lyra said softly. After everything you've risked for us. She hesitated, then asked the question that had been weighing on her since their escape. What happened to the Astra Voyager? And the Chiron vessel? Marlowe's expression grew graver. The wormhole collapsed, taking both ships with it. Before it did, we detected additional Chiron vessels attempting to emerge from the other side. It appears the device was intended to create a stable passage for an invasion force. Lyra felt a chill despite the controlled temperature of the medical bay. Then my suspicions were correct. We were used, sent to deliver that device to a specific location, to activate it with our distress call. Her voice hardened. Someone within the Xerian consortium must be collaborating with the Chiron militancy. That would be my assessment as well, Marlowe agreed. The question is, how high does the conspiracy go? And what was their ultimate objective? Before Lyra could respond, one of the medical monitors emitted a soft alert. Dr. Williams moved quickly to the indicated cryopod, where Captain Nerissa lay in suspended animation. Her neural patterns are shifting, Williams reported. She's beginning to emerge from stasis naturally, The pod must have been programmed for automatic revival after a certain period. Lyra joined him at the pod, studying the readings with concern. This is too soon. The revival process should be gradual, carefully monitored. Can you guide us through the proper procedure? Williams asked. Lyra nodded, grateful for the opportunity to focus on a concrete task rather than the larger, more troubling questions raised by Marlowe's revelations. Cora, she called, activating the portable interface the humans had provided for the Xerian AI. Initiate Revival Protocol Theta-7 for Cryopod 1. Acknowledged. Cora's voice responded from the device. Revival Protocol Theta-7 initiated. Estimated time to consciousness, 43 minutes. As the medical team prepared for Nerissa's awakening, Marlowe drew Lyra aside. Doctor, I understand this is a difficult time for you, but there's something else we need to discuss. The seriousness in his tone caught Lyra's attention. What is it, Captain? The Alliance Council will want a full report on what happened here. The Chiron device, the wormhole, the attempted invasion. They'll have questions about the Xerian Consortium's involvement, questions that could have serious diplomatic implications. Lyra understood immediately. Her testimony would be crucial in determining the Alliance's response to what could be interpreted as an act of aggression by Xerian authorities. If handled poorly, it could lead to a breakdown in relations between their species, perhaps even conflict. I will tell them the truth as I understand it, she said firmly. That our mission was scientific in nature, that most of us had no knowledge of the device's true purpose. But I will not shield those responsible for putting my crew at risk and using us as unwitting pawns. Marlowe studied her for a moment, then nodded, apparently satisfied with her response. That's all I can ask. For what it's worth. I believe you, Dr. Tolan, and I believe most of your people are innocent in this affair. His words offered some comfort, though the weight of responsibility still pressed heavily on Lyra's shoulders. 3 colleagues lost, a conspiracy reaching into the highest levels of Xerian government, and now the prospect of difficult questions from Alliance authorities. The path ahead would not be easy. Captain, she said, gathering her courage, when this is over, when my colleagues have been safely revived and your ship repaired, what happens to us? Marlowe's expression softened slightly. That will largely depend on Alliance Command and the diplomatic situation. But speaking personally, I believe you and your crew should be granted asylum if you request it. The Avenger will support such a request. The offer surprised Lyra. Asylum had not occurred to her as a possibility, but now that Marlowe mentioned it, she realized it might be the safest option for her and her colleagues. Returning to Xeria with knowledge of the conspiracy could be dangerous, especially if the corruption reached high into the government. Thank you, Captain, she said sincerely. Your kindness extends beyond the rescue itself. Marlowe seemed almost embarrassed by her gratitude. It's what anyone would do. No, Lyra countered gently. It isn't. You violated regulations, risked your ship and crew, engaged a hostile force, all for the sake of scientists from another species you had never met. Such actions go beyond duty or protocol. They speak to something more fundamental. Before Marlowe could respond, Dr. Williams called from across the medical bay. Dr. Tolan, Captain Nerissa's revival is progressing faster than expected. She's showing signs of consciousness. Lyra moved quickly to the cryopod, where the senior Xerian's eyelids were indeed beginning to flutter. The pod's transparent cover had been removed, allowing the medical team direct access to the patient. Nerissa's blue-tinged skin was regaining its normal vibrance as her metabolism accelerated, emerging from the artificial hibernation. Captain Nerissa, Lyra called softly in their native language. Can you hear me? It's Lyra. You're safe. The older Xerian's eyes opened fully, their multifaceted surface catching the light as she focused on Lyra's face. Lyra, she responded, her voice weak but clear. What? Where are we? Lyra took her hand, a gesture of reassurance among their kind. We're aboard a United Earth Alliance vessel, the USS Avenger. They responded to our distress call after the Astra Voyager was damaged. Nerissa's expression shifted as memory returned. The device. It activated unexpectedly. There was an energy surge. She tried to sit up, only to be gently restrained by Dr. Williams. Easy, Captain, he advised. Your body needs time to adjust after cryostasis. Nerissa regarded the human with surprise and suspicion, then turned back to Lyra. Humans? We're with humans. The question carried layers of meaning, reflecting the complex history between their species. Not hostile, but not close allies either. Yes, Lyra confirmed. They rescued us at great risk to themselves. Captain Marlowe and his crew have shown extraordinary compassion and courage. Sensing the need for introductions, Marlowe stepped forward, standing beside Lyra. Captain Nerissa, I'm James Marlowe of the USS Avenger. Welcome aboard our vessel. Nerissa studied him with the keen assessment of a veteran explorer. You responded to our distress call, despite the risks. The Alliance is not known for such flexibility in their protocols. A hint of a smile touched Marlowe's lips. Perhaps we're more flexible than our reputation suggests, especially when lives are at stake. The Xerian captain's gaze moved past him, scanning the medical bay. My crew, are they all? Lyra tightened her grip on Nerissa's hand, the moment she had been dreading now upon her. We were able to rescue 9 pods, including yours, but 3 were left behind when the ship was destroyed. Her voice broke slightly. Dr. Alara, Technician Voss, and Xenolinguist Nevan. They were still in cryostasis when we had to evacuate. The news visibly shook Nerissa, her compound eyes darkening with grief. How? What happened to the ship? Lyra looked to Marlowe, uncertain how much to reveal about the Chiron device and its purpose. The human captain stepped forward, taking responsibility for the explanation. Captain Nerissa, the artifact your ship was sent to recover turned out to be a piece of Chiron military technology. Specifically, a device designed to create stable wormholes across vast distances. When activated, it attempted to establish a connection to former Chiron space, likely as a part of a planned invasion. A Chiron warship appeared, apparently intending to use the wormhole, but we managed to prevent it from doing so. In the ensuing battle, the wormhole collapsed, destroying both your vessel and the enemy ship. Nerissa's expression shifted from grief to shock, then to a cold anger that Lyra had rarely seen in her captain. Chiron technology, we were told it was an archaeological artifact of cultural significance. Our mission was scientific exploration, nothing more. We believe, Marlowe continued carefully, that someone within your government may have deliberately misled you about the nature of the mission. Dr. Tolan has shared similar concerns. Nerissa turned to Lyra, her gaze intense. You suspected? Not initially, Lyra admitted. But after the device activated in response to our distress beacon, I began to question the official explanation. It was too sophisticated, too purposeful to be merely an archaeological find. The Xerian captain closed her eyes briefly, processing this betrayal. When she opened them again, her resolve was evident. The others must be told when they awaken, and we must consider our next steps carefully. If elements within the consortium are collaborating with Chiron remnants, the Alliance Council will want to investigate these allegations thoroughly, Marlowe assured her. I've already informed Dr. Tolan that we would support asylum requests from you and your crew, if that's what you decide is safest. Nerissa studied the human captain with new appreciation. That is unexpectedly generous. Captain Marlowe, thank you. She attempted to sit up again, this time more slowly, and Dr. Williams adjusted the bed to accommodate her. How soon until the others can be revived? We're proceeding with caution, Williams explained. Your physiology is similar enough to human for our equipment to be effective, but different enough that we're taking no chances. I'd estimate another 8 to 12 hours for all 9 pods. Nerissa nodded, then turned back to Lyra. And you? You were not in cryostasis when the disaster struck. How did you manage to survive long enough for rescue to arrive? I had to maintain the distress beacon, Lyra explained simply. Someone needed to stay conscious, to make the decisions necessary for survival. As the senior biologist, I volunteered. The half-truth seemed to satisfy Nerissa, though Lyra suspected her captain knew there was more to the story. The full account, the failing life support, the desperate repairs, the terrifying isolation, could wait for a more private moment. How long until we reach Alliance space? Nerissa asked Marlowe. Our warp drive was damaged during the engagement with the Chiron vessel, he replied. Engineering estimates repairs will take approximately 18 hours. Once we're underway again, it will be another 3 days at reduced speed to reach the nearest Alliance outpost. 3 days, Nerissa echoed, considering. Time enough for my crew to recover and for us to decide our course of action. She fixed Marlowe with her direct gaze. I would appreciate access to communication with Xerian authorities once we're within range. Whatever conspiracy exists, I doubt it encompasses our entire government. There are those who would want to know what has happened, and who would act to expose those responsible. Marlowe nodded. Of course. When the time comes, you'll have full communication privileges. In the meantime, consider yourself and your crew honored guests aboard the Avenger. As the conversation continued, Lyra found her attention drawn to the viewport on the far wall of the medical bay. Stars streaked past as the Avenger moved at impulse speed, carrying them away from the site of disaster and toward the safety of Alliance space. Somewhere out there, the remains of the Astra Voyager had been consumed by the collapsing wormhole, along with 3 of her colleagues, 3 friends whose faces would never again light up with the excitement of discovery. The guilt of survival weighed heavily, but alongside it grew a resolve to ensure their sacrifice was not in vain. Whatever conspiracy had placed them in harm's way, whatever forces had sought to use their scientific mission as cover for military aggression, they would be exposed, justice would be served, and perhaps, in time, the alliance between humans and Xerians that had begun in this moment of crisis would grow into something stronger, a shared commitment to preserving the peace and expanding knowledge throughout the stars. For now, though, there was grief to process, colleagues to revive, and a long journey home. Lyra turned her attention back to Captain Nerissa, ready to assist with whatever came next. 3 days later, as the USS Avenger approached the Alliance outpost at Proxima Station, Lyra stood on the observation deck, watching as the massive space facility grew larger in the viewport. Its sprawling arms extended outward from a central hub, housing not only Alliance military personnel, but also civilian scientists, diplomats, and traders from dozens of species across the known galaxy. Impressive, isn't it? Lyra turned to find Captain Marlowe standing beside her, his hands clasped behind his back in what she had come to recognize as his typical stance when not actively commanding his ship. Very, she agreed. I've read about Proxima Station but never visited. It was constructed after the conflict, correct? Marlowe nodded. A symbol of the new peace, and a practical necessity. Neutral ground where former adversaries could meet, trade, negotiate. He glanced at her. How are your colleagues adjusting? As well as can be expected, Lyra replied. All 9 of the rescued Xerians had been successfully revived over the past days, their physical recovery proceeding smoothly under Dr. Williams's care. The emotional recovery was proving more challenging. The loss of Alara, Voss, and Nevin has affected everyone deeply, and the revelation about our mission. She shook her head. It's difficult to accept that we were used in such a way. Captain Nerissa seems to be handling it with remarkable composure, Marlowe observed. She's experienced, Lyra said, a note of admiration in her voice. 27 years in deep space exploration. She's faced crises before, though nothing quite like this. But yes, her leadership has been invaluable in helping the others process what happened. They stood in companionable silence for a moment, watching as the Avenger began its final approach to the docking bay. The ship had been operating on reduced power since the battle. Its warp nacelles repaired enough for safe travel, but still requiring extensive work once they reached the station. What happens now? Lyra asked eventually. To us. I mean, Marlowe turned to face her fully. That depends partly on you. Alliance Command has reviewed my preliminary report and granted temporary residency status to all Xerian survivors, pending a full investigation. If you choose to request asylum, as discussed earlier, the process will begin immediately. If not, we return to Xeria and face whatever awaits us there. Lyra finished for him. Essentially, yes. Marlowe hesitated, then added, For what it's worth, I've included in my report a strong recommendation that your testimony be given significant weight in any investigation. You saved your crew, Dr. Tolan. You made the hard decisions when they were needed most. That counts for something. Lyra felt a warmth spreading through her at his words. Unexpected validation from a being of another species who, just days ago, had been a complete stranger. Thank you, Captain. Your confidence means more than you might realize. The ship's communication system activated. Bridge to Captain Marlowe. We're on final approach to Proxima Station. Docking procedures commencing. Acknowledged, Marlowe replied. I'm on my way. He turned back to Lyra. Duty calls, but we'll speak again before you disembark. There are still matters to discuss. As he departed, Lyra returned her gaze to the viewport, where Proxima Station now filled the entire view. Alliance vessels of various designs moved in coordinated patterns around the facility, while smaller shuttles darted between docking bays like busy insects. Among them, she spotted several ships of Xerian design, diplomatic vessels, most likely, stationed permanently at the outpost. Would those diplomats believe their story? Or were some of them part of the conspiracy that had placed the Chiron device aboard the Astra Voyager in the first place? The uncertainty was troubling, but Lyra took comfort in knowing that Captain Marlowe and the crew of the Avenger would support their account of what had transpired. The ship eased into its assigned docking bay with barely a tremor, the artificial gravity and inertial dampeners compensating perfectly for the change in momentum. A soft chime indicated that docking procedures were complete, and the main systems were switching to station power. Lyra made her way back to the guest quarters that had been assigned to the Xerian survivors, where she found Captain Nerissa and several others gathered in quiet conversation. They looked up as she entered, their expressions somber but determined. We've made our decision, Nerissa announced without preamble. We will request asylum, as Captain Marlowe suggested, at least until the Alliance investigation is complete and we can determine who within our government was involved in this conspiracy. Lyra nodded, having expected this outcome. I support this decision. It's the safest course for now. There's more, Nerissa continued. Before we disembark, I want to hold a memorial service for Alara, Voss, and Nevin. Captain Marlowe has agreed to allow us use of their ceremonial chamber. I'd like you to speak, Lyra. You were the last to see them. The request caught Lyra by surprise, emotion welling up unexpectedly. Yes, of course, it would be an honor. Good. The service will be in 2 hours. That should give everyone time to prepare. Nerissa placed a hand on Lyra's shoulder, a gesture of both comfort and solidarity. Your actions saved 9 lives, Lyra. Never forget that, even as we mourn those we lost. The words echoed Captain Marlowe's earlier reassurance. Yet coming from Nerissa, her own captain, her own species, they carried additional weight. Perhaps, in time, the guilt would fade, replaced by the satisfaction of knowing she had done everything possible under impossible circumstances. 2 hours later, the Xerian survivors gathered in the Avengers Ceremonial Chamber, a modest space typically used for shipboard weddings, promotions, and memorial services. Captain Marlowe had arranged for appropriate accommodations to the traditional Xerian mourning ritual, including specialized lighting that shifted through the spectrum in a pattern that symbolized the cycle of life and death in Xerian culture. To Lyra's surprise, several human crew members were also present, including Chief Hayes, Dr. Williams, and Captain Marlowe himself. They stood respectfully at the back of the chamber, allowing the Xerians the central space for their ceremony. Captain Nerissa began the ritual, speaking the traditional words of remembrance in their native language. Though the humans wouldn't understand the specific words, the meaning transcended language: honor for those lost, gratitude for their contributions, hope for what their legacy would inspire in others. When it came time for Lyra to speak, she moved to the center of the chamber, conscious of both her Xerian colleagues and the human observers. She had prepared words, but as she began to speak, she found herself setting aside her planned remarks in favor of more personal reflections. "Dr. Alara was not just my research partner, but my friend," she said, her voice steady despite the emotion behind her words. She saw patterns in biological systems that others missed, connections that revealed the underlying harmony of life across diverse ecosystems. Technician Voss saved our ship from complete destruction when we encountered the anomaly, his quick thinking and technical expertise giving us the chance for survival that ultimately led to the rescue of 9 of our number. And xenolinguist Nevin, whose passion for communication extended beyond mere words to the cultural contexts that give language its deepest meaning. She paused, gathering her thoughts before continuing. They died as they lived, in pursuit of knowledge, in service to scientific discovery. Though they did not know the true nature of our mission, they approached their work with integrity and dedication. We honor them not just by remembering, but by carrying forward that same commitment to truth and understanding. The ceremony continued with other Xerians, offering their own remembrances. Throughout it all, Lyra was aware of Captain Marlowe, watching from the back of the chamber. His expression solemn, but also curious, as if the Xerian mourning ritual offered him insight into their culture that no academic study could provide. When the formal ceremony concluded, the humans approached to offer their condolences, a gesture that bridged the cultural gap between their species. Dr. Williams spoke quietly with several of the Xerian medical staff about their colleagues' contributions, while Chief Hayes engaged with the technical specialists. Captain Marlowe made his way to where Lyra stood with Nerissa. "A beautiful ceremony," he said simply. "Thank you for allowing us to participate." "Thank you for accommodating our traditions," Nerissa replied. "It means a great deal to us." "Captain," Marlowe continued, his tone shifting slightly to indicate a change in subject. "Alliance Command has requested a formal debriefing with both of you to begin the investigation into the Chiron device and the apparent conspiracy within Xerian government. The meeting is scheduled for tomorrow morning." Nerissa nodded. "We expected as much. We'll be prepared." "There's something else," Marlowe added, directing his words primarily to Lyra now. "The Science Division at Proxima Station has expressed particular interest in your research findings, the microbial samples you collected from the gaseous moon before the incident. Dr. Williams mentioned you've been continuing your analysis even during transit." "Yes," Lyra confirmed, surprised, but pleased by the interest. The microorganisms display remarkable adaptive properties that could have significant medical applications. I salvaged what data I could before the evacuation. The division chief would like to meet with you separately to discuss potential collaboration. It seems your discovery may be even more significant than you realized. The news was unexpected, a reminder that amid the tragedy and political complications, the scientific mission itself had yielded valuable results. It was a small comfort, but meaningful nonetheless. I would be honored to meet with them, Lyra said. As the gathering began to disperse, Xerians and humans moving together toward the exit, Lyra found herself walking alongside Captain Marlowe. The human had proven himself not just a rescuer, but an ally. His commitment to justice and truth, aligning with her own values despite their different backgrounds. Captain, she said quietly, I never properly thanked you, not just for the rescue, but for believing us, for supporting our account of what happened. Marlowe glanced at her, a slight smile softening his weathered features. In my experience, Dr. Tolan, the truth has a certain resonance. Those who are willing to listen can usually recognize it, regardless of who's speaking or what species they belong to. It was a surprisingly philosophical observation from a military commander, and Lyra found herself reevaluating her understanding of humans, or at least, this particular human. Perhaps their species had more in common than the academic texts suggested. As they reached the exit, Marlowe paused. Doctor, regardless of what comes next, the investigation, your asylum request, your scientific work, I want you to know that the Avenger and her crew stand ready to assist. Some missions continue long after the initial rescue is complete. With that, he departed, leaving Lyra to contemplate his words. They had been abandoned in deep space, their situation seemingly hopeless. But a human warship had answered their call, defying regulations and risking lives to save beings they had never met. In that act of compassion and courage, something new had been forged, a connection between species that transcended political boundaries and cultural differences. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Lyra would face them with the knowledge that, even in the vast emptiness of space, one was never truly alone. There would always be those, of any species, who would answer the call of distress, who would reach across the void to offer aid, who would risk everything to save lives they valued simply because they were lives. In that truth lay the greatest discovery of all, not of alien microbes or advanced technology, but of the shared values that united sentient beings across the cosmos. The universal principle that no one deserved to die alone in the emptiness of space. The memorial service for her lost colleagues had provided closure of a sort. Now, as Lyra prepared to disembark onto Proxima Station with her surviving crew members, she felt ready to begin the next chapter of their journey, one that would seek justice for those lost, truth about the conspiracy that had endangered them, and perhaps, in time, a deeper understanding between humans and Xerians than had ever existed before. The Astra Voyager was gone, but its mission, its true mission of discovery and understanding, would continue through those who had survived. That, Lyra decided, was the most fitting memorial of all. 6 months later, Lyra stood at the viewport of the newly commissioned research vessel, Horizon Seeker, watching as the final preparations for departure were completed. The ship, a collaborative design incorporating both human and Xerian technology, represented something unprecedented, a joint scientific mission between the United Earth Alliance and the reformed Xerian Consortium. The investigation into the Chiron incident had uncovered a conspiracy reaching into the highest levels of the previous Xerian government, leading to significant political upheaval and reform. Several high-ranking officials had been removed from power, charged with treason for their secret collaboration with Chiron remnants. The Alliance, for its part, had intensified efforts to locate and neutralize any remaining Chiron bases, preventing another attempted invasion before it could materialize. Through it all, the survivors of the Astra Voyager had remained on Proxima Station, providing testimony, sharing scientific knowledge, and gradually building bridges between their cultures. The asylum, granted initially as a temporary measure, had evolved into a permanent diplomatic posting for those who wished to remain in Alliance space. "Ready for departure, Dr. Tolan?" Lyra turned to find Captain Nerissa approaching, now wearing the distinctive uniform that marked her as commander of the Horizon Seeker. Despite offers of retirement and a comfortable position within the new Xerian government, Nerissa had chosen to return to space, this time with a mixed crew of humans and Xerians. "More than ready," Lyra replied with a smile. "The laboratory facilities are extraordinary. Better than anything I've worked with before." "A benefit of combined technologies," Nerissa observed. "The humans have contributed much to the design." She paused, then added more quietly, "Have you heard from Captain Marlowe?" "Yes, just yesterday. The Avenger is patrolling the former Chiron territories. They've found no evidence of additional wormhole technology, which is reassuring." Nerissa nodded, satisfied. "He's a remarkable individual, as are many of the humans we've come to know." "Yes," Lyra agreed. "They are." "The ship's communication system activated. Bridge to Captain Nerissa. Final departure checks complete. We are cleared for departure from Proxima Station." "Acknowledged," Nerissa replied. "I'm on my way." She turned back to Lyra. "Join me on the bridge for departure?" Lyra nodded, following her captain through the corridors of the new vessel. Unlike the Astra Voyager, which had been purely Xerian in design, the Horizon Seeker reflected the synthesis of two technological traditions, the organic curves of Xerian aesthetics blending seamlessly with the practical efficiency of human engineering. The bridge, too, demonstrated this integration, with stations designed to accommodate the physiological differences between the species. Humans and Xerians worked side by side, their previous unfamiliarity with each other's methods, giving way to a collaborative approach that drew on the strengths of both traditions. As Nerissa took her place in the command chair, Lyra moved to the science station, where her research would help guide the mission's exploratory priorities. On the main view screen, Proxima Station began to recede as the Horizon Seeker disengaged from its docking clamps and moved slowly away from the massive facility. "Course laid in for the Denarius cluster," announced the human navigation officer. "Ready at your command, Captain." Nerissa exchanged a glance with Lyra. The Denarius cluster, the very region where the Chiron wormhole had attempted to establish its endpoint. Now, instead of an invasion force, a scientific expedition would enter that space, seeking understanding rather than conquest. "Proceed, Lieutenant," Nerissa ordered. "Warp factor 6." The stars on the view screen elongated as the ship accelerated to faster-than-light speed, carrying its mixed crew toward the unknown. Whatever awaited them in the depths of space, they would face it together, not as separate species with separate agendas, but as colleagues united in the pursuit of knowledge. Lyra turned her attention to her console, where the preliminary data from their destination was already streaming in. New worlds to explore, new life forms to discover, new mysteries to unravel. The work that she, Alara, Voss, and Nevin had begun would continue, their legacy honored through continued exploration. Once abandoned in deep space, she had believed all hope lost. A human warship had answered that desperate call, proving that even in the darkest void, connection was possible. Now, that singular act of rescue had blossomed into something greater, a partnership that promised to expand the horizons of both species. The Horizon Seeker surged forward into the unknown, carrying with it the best of what both humans and Xerians had to offer. And Lyra, watching the stars streak past on the view screen, felt a sense of purpose and belonging stronger than any she had known before. The void between the stars was vast, but it was no longer empty. It was filled with possibility, with discovery, with connection. It was filled with hope.